All right, everyone. Man, it's great to see all you here tonight. Got a great webinar lined up, and I see people are entering the session, so that is fantastic. Happy November 27th. I guess that's Halloween Eve. I know we've got at least one person on our team tonight dressed up in a costume. The rest of us were too chicken. We didn't do that. Anyway. Sean, I'm sure we'll show you his costume pretty soon enough, and it's pretty good. But anyway, tonight, it's one of our favorite webinars. We always enjoy doing this one. This is how the heck do you do that? And, we get questions so often about, how do you collect information using forms, or how do you do that stuff with the webinars, or how do you do that? And so we like to occasionally put together these webinars where we kind of pull back the curtain and demonstrate how we get a lot of our work done as part of the Zone 34 public image team. It's not really magic. It's just we've studied this stuff and done a lot of research, and actually a lot of it's self-taught. We'll talk about that a little bit later as well and give you some of those resources. But let's go ahead and get this thing kicked off. And let me share this screen here. So tonight is how the heck do you do that? As always, I'm joined by my amazing Zone 34 public image team. We have Kim Walden. She is up in Georgia. We have Allison Charney Hussey is down in Southwest Florida, along with Sean Patty in Trinidad. Michael Wallstrom is on the East Coast of Florida. And joining us tonight as well is the incoming Rotary Public Image Coordinator, who will be starting on July 1st, 2023. We have Susan Corder. And Susan is a big part of our team right now as we kind of prepare the succession as she begins next year. Want to make sure that you guys don't forget, we had World Polio Day a couple of days ago. And man, there was so much great stuff on social media. Actually, I spoke to a Rotary Club this morning and talked about World Polio Day. And I reminded them that October 24th, it may be technically World Polio Day, but World Polio Day is every single day. Every single day we have the chance to tell the story of how Rotary is taking on this enormous task of eradicating polio and how close we are. But of course, we always do celebrate that one day where we try to really emphasize the importance of this project, which is October 24th. And as part of your task as the public image citation is to record your activity for your club for World Polio Day. So be sure, actually, let's click over. I'm going to switch over to the website. I've got a couple of things I want to show you over here. So this is our Elevate Rotary website. And let me make sure I have the right share. So yeah, share that. So we're on our elevaterotary.org website, and scroll down here, and right here in the middle, you have your public image citation with this carousel. And here is our World Polio Day task right here. Oh, it slipped away from me. It's going to come back in a minute. There it is. So just go right here and click that link and hit this to complete your task. That's all you have to do. Now, of course, we're about to be in November, which is Foundation Month. It's another exciting time to tell the good work that Rotary does around the world and in our communities. So we've already loaded up the Foundation Month task for you. And really all it is to give an example using social media, or maybe it's a club program, of how you tell the great stories of what the Rotary Foundation does. So you can go ahead and get started on your Foundation Month task right here. Now, I know a lot of you have completed the first 3 tasks of the year, the ones for July, August, and September. Now, those tasks were to do the audit, take a look at all of your social media channels, your websites, all of your communication channels, and make sure that they're up to date, the information is accurate, and you're using the appropriate Rotary logo. And then in August and September, of course, we had the content calendar and the public image plan. Now, we feel that those 3 tasks are pretty foundational, and it's pretty important that those are done at the beginning of the year. It really doesn't make a lot of sense to put together a public image plan in March. By that point, you should be doing your public image plan for the next Rotary year. So for those first 3 tasks, we are going to be shutting down the forms to enter those tasks into the form on November 15th. So that's 2 weeks from today, and gives you some time to get those up to date. We'll send out a reminder on November 11th, which is the Friday before the 15th. The 15th is on a Tuesday, but go ahead and get those citations and those tasks up to date for June, July, or July, August, September. because we want to make sure we give out a whole lot of citations this year. Now, you can always go to the website And we added this link right here in the middle of the page. Click here to view your club citation status. So if you click that, it takes you to a page, and we have embedded that Excel spreadsheet, or actually it's a Google sheet, right here in the middle. And we can tell who has done their tasks. So Douglas County has done the first 3 tasks for the year. Looks like Peachtree City's got 2. Look at that. Meriwether County, Warm Springs, and 6900. You guys are overachievers. You've already loaded all 4 of your tasks. So you can go right to this page and find your status. And then we also, at the top of the page, we added the links that go directly to those tasks. So you can click any of these and go straight to that page. Here we are redirecting, and here's that task. So want to make it super easy because we want everyone to win. We don't give out participation awards. You do have to do work, but we want everybody to win. And so be sure to check your status on the elevaterotary.org website. So I think I've kind of beat that one to death. So let's go back to our slide deck here. But you guys are doing fantastic. We have seen just amazing content come through on those citation tasks. Folks are doing a great job, and it's evident as you kind of look at Facebook and Instagram and the websites, can really tell that Zone 34, the stuff that we're seeing from the clubs and districts in Zone 34, you guys are really doing a fantastic job. And I just want to make sure that you keep it up and continue to just do fantastic with the Rotary story. Now, getting back into how the heck do you do that? We're going to get into the meat of our presentation now. And we asked you guys in the registration form if you had specific things that you would like us to cover. Now, a lot of folks asked for social media, design, streaming. Those are pretty broad. We're looking for specific things, and it would take us a long time to kind of cover social media, take us a long time to cover design or streaming. And actually, if you go back and look at some of our past webinars, we've covered a lot of that material already. We're always welcome and happy to answer specific questions, but those broad topics of social media and design are a little bit too broad for us to cover in a single webinar. So we aren't going to be able to cover those tonight. We also got some questions about Club Runner and DACDB. Those are things also that really, they have really good support on their website. I went and looked at some of the support documents on the Club Runner web and the DACDB, and I think some of that stuff is covered in DACDB and Club Runner. So I'd recommend you go and look at their support. We're always happy if you have specific questions. We can actually reach out to some of the folks at DACDB and Club Runner to see if they can help us out. But those are, again, some of the areas that were kind of outside what we were looking to cover tonight. But I can tell you one of my favorite responses, and this one would take a lot too, but it was really, really meaningful. And you're going to do a lot of this as you go through your public image strategy. And that is, how the heck do you engage members? And I think having an effective public image strategy will engage your members, because a lot of times, we're not only notifying and kind of communicating externally what we're doing as Rotary, which is great, but we're also letting our own clubs know, well, this is what we're doing. This is what your club is responsible for. This is how we're making an impact on our community. This is how we're making an impact around the world. And when our own members, when they know what their club is doing through that communication, it really makes them proud, and it ensures that they're going to remain part of Rotary. I think it helps with retention, but it's also going to get them engaged, because people want to be a part of something successful, and people want to be a part of something that's really making a difference. People have that altruistic spirit, I believe, that really wants to make a difference. And so I think it was a great response, and I think we could go on and on forever with engaged members, but having an effective public image strategy, I think, truly will engage your members. So it was a great response. Again, super broad, but it really stuck out when I got that one come through. So I think one of the main things that we want to share with you tonight is, as you do this, as you learn how to use these tools and how to create things using these web-based tools and these different platforms, don't worry. I mean, you're not going to break it. I think a lot of times you need to kind of go into this with just kind of well, let's see what this does, click this button and see what happens. Yeah, something might break short term, but you can always fix it and figure it out and move on. And I think a lot of what the Zone 34 public image team has learned through the years of kind of going through some of these tools, we just learned to experiment and see what works, see what doesn't work. I mean, if it doesn't work, don't do it again. If it does work, let's do more of that. So I think you need to kind of go into this with a kind of an attitude of, well, let's see what this does and see how it works. But I can also tell you that our team, it's not like we had these rays of sun come shining down on our heads one day and we were just immediately enlightened with how to use a lot of this technology. I can tell you that we're all educated and self-taught, and we learned how to do a lot of these techniques and how to use a lot of these platforms using things like the Zoom support resources on the Zoom website. And Sean Patty is going to go through a lot of that in a minute. They have great videos and documentation that are super helpful. YouTube is an amazing tool. And I know there's a lot of content on YouTube, but you can find so much of what you're looking for that can help you with your public image strategy and how to use these technologies using YouTube. Google is your friend. Absolutely. You can Google pretty much anything. And we know that a lot of times maybe Google and YouTube isn't going to be a super specific example of maybe what how a Rotary Club wants to use a tool or a technology or a platform. And so later on in this webinar, we're going to show you how the Zone 34 team is actually going to try to make some of these demos very contextual to a Rotary Club or a Rotary district so that it has kind of a Rotary flavor to it. So you can see the demo from a Rotary perspective of how you might use that technology or how you might use that platform. So we do have some resources that we're going to show, doing some demos, and it's from a Rotary perspective. So that's going to come up later on in this webinar. But for right now, we're going to hand it off to Sean Patty, because one of the areas that you guys really had a lot of questions around was Zoom and Zoom best practices. And I know, we're kind of post-pandemic outside of COVID now, and we're not doing perhaps as many or completely online meetings. Maybe we're doing hybrid. Maybe we're just doing Zoom as webinars, or maybe we're doing Zoom as just occasional meetings within our clubs or our districts. There are some best practices, though, that Sean has kind of pulled together and is going to teach you tonight that I think are super helpful, whether you're heading up maybe a zone coordinator team, or maybe you're heading up a zone initiative, or maybe you're heading up a club or a district and you just want to know how to use Zoom better. That was a question we got a lot of. And so at this point, I'm going to hand it off to Sean and let Sean talk about some of the Zoom best practices. Go for it, Sean.
Thanks, Marshall. So as Marshall said, a lot of questions that we get center around Zoom. We all kind of had to grow and live on Zoom for a couple of years during COVID. Out of necessity, we have the advantage now that, what Zoom provides, which is, even though we're back and meeting in person and whatnot, Zoom still allows us to connect with people all over the world. It's a tool that is not going to go anywhere. It's not going to disappear from most clubs in their daily or weekly or monthly routines, whether it's club meetings, whether it's, special events, even at district, zone, and Rotary International levels. Online events and online meetings through Zoom are still happening on a consistent basis, just because it provides a much wider reach. And when we look at things, from the perspective that Rotary's preaching as far as diversity, equity, and inclusion, particularly when it comes to the last one, right? Inclusion, to be inclusive for more and more people, that's what Zoom allows, because we can reach a lot more people. We can provide them with access to information, where versus if it was just something in person, if you're not there, you miss out. So we're going to kind of run through really quickly and at a high level some best practices when it comes to Zoom. I know there may be a lot more detailed questions that come up, and similar to what Marshall said before, when it comes to if in this case it's Zoom, or if it's social media stuff, or if it's streaming stuff, feel free. You can reach out to your district public image chairs with specific issues and questions. You can shoot emails to the zone team as well with specific issues and questions. We don't necessarily have to wait for these kind of once a month webinars to help you guys out. So that's just me saying, we don't get to what you want to get an answer to tonight, you can always send us an email and we will definitely get back to you and help you guys out. But also reach out to your district public image chairs as well, because they're great resources to help you and your clubs. So first thing in Zoom, I'm going to start at the basic, right? And one of the basics that a lot of people may not necessarily delve into when they subscribe for a Zoom account. And I'm going to predicate most of what I'm going to say in all of these slides are assuming that you are using a subscription account with Zoom and not a free account. In most cases, you're going to need a paid account, a subscription account, in order to do stuff at a club level, whether it's your regular meetings, otherwise you'll get stopped and cut off at 40 minutes, or whether it's, a special event where you're going to have a lot more people attending. So again, this is for paid accounts, or pro accounts, as other people know them. So one of the first things you want to do is go into the settings, explore the settings, see all the different things that you can turn on and turn off, that you can have preset as part of your Zoom account. What that's going to do is it's going to help you understand all the different features that are available with the type of account that you have. Some of them will be applicable to meetings. Some of them will be applicable to webinars. Some of them will deal with how you schedule stuff. Some of them will deal with virtual backgrounds. Some of them will deal with surveys and polls and Q&As. Again, it's just a really good jumping off point to give people an idea of, hey, Zoom is not just me, a camera, and a mic. It's all these other little things and all these other little features that you can tweak and turn on and turn off and customize depending on what you need in general or specifically for a particular event. So that's the first thing I'm going to say is, before you schedule anything and if you haven't done it as yet, even though you may have a Zoom account for a while, check the settings, go in, explore it. It's going to be a really good resource for you. One of the first things we get a lot of questions on, and I've been getting a lot of these questions even before COVID, is in Zoom, you have these two kind of main environments or ecosystems that you can work in, right? Zoom meetings versus Zoom webinars. And everybody always kind of wants to know, well, hey, what's the advantage of one over the other? Why should I use meetings versus why should I use webinars? There's a lot of differences and a lot of similarities between the two, and I'm not going to waste a lot of time going through them point by point. We actually have a little video up on our Elevate Rotary website that goes through it in a little bit more detail if you ever want to check it out. But the long and short of it is, in most cases, meetings are meant to be more interactive. It's where you have a fixed number of persons that are going to be kind of speaking to each other, where you need each person that's going to be there to at some point say something or contribute, versus a webinar environment, which is what we're in right now, where it's only going to be a small number of persons, most of that are going to be speaking and contributing. Most of the persons who are in attendance are just really watching. Each environment, meetings or webinars, again, offers different types of control. So like right now, because we're in a webinar environment, no one can turn their video on, no one can unmute themselves. That's just because it's meant to be this small group of people, which in webinars are called panelists, that have the ability to show themselves or to be heard. Everybody else is really just watching on and listening in. In a meeting environment, anybody can turn their camera on. Anybody can be unmuted or be given the ability to mute and unmute themselves. And again, it's meant to be more interactive. So first and foremost is determine what type of environment you want your event to be based on, what you want to do in the event, how you want things to flow, how much control you want to maintain over it versus how much control you want to give everybody else that's going to be in attendance. Next one is going to touch on Zoom support. So Marshall mentioned, when it comes to things like Club Runner and DACDB and a lot of these other platforms that we get questions on, one of the first things that we would advise everybody does is always go and check out the support pages for these applications and systems, right? And Zoom has a pretty decent support page. You can type something into that search bar, and most of the times it will spit out different types of results, right? Whether it's support articles that they themselves produce, whether it's community-based contributions from other users. 99% of the time, usually you can find an answer to your question using the support page. It's just a matter of having to maybe wade through a couple different results to find exactly what you're looking for. But from my own experience, I can tell you that in most cases, when you have a problem, you are not the first one to have that problem. And because you're not the first one, somebody has already posted something on it. And if it's not on the support page, you could probably, as a second option, just Google it and something's going to come up and hopefully resolve your issue. But again, one of the first things that you should do if you are now getting into Zoom, or if you're still not 100% on all the different features and functions in Zoom, go to the support page. The last part I'll mention here is Zoom has also introduced its own learning center. So for those folks that are familiar with like the Rotary Learning Center and how that's set up, a very similar offering is now available through Zoom, where it has everything from beginner to intermediate to advanced level modules that you can do on your own, at your own pace, in your own time. And it'll essentially provide you with training and tutorials on all the different functions and features in Zoom. So if you have never looked at it and you want to maybe beef up your Zoom skills, through the support center, you can access the learning center in Zoom and do different modules.
One more thing that I would point out to folks is a lot of these platforms do their own special events, their own special training events. And actually next week, Zoom is going to have what's called Zoomtopia. And I've been to Zoomtopia a couple of times, and it is all online, interactive training sessions. Some of it's very basic, some of it is very advanced. And just do a Google search for Zoomtopia. It's scheduled, I think, for next Tuesday and Wednesday. And yeah, watch some of their own folks doing the training. Or they actually have people participate that use the platform, not working for Zoom, and they show how they use it. So I would recommend checking out Zoomtopia next week.
Say in addition to Zoomtopia, Zoom provides a lot of great tutorial videos through their YouTube channel and other means. So again, if you're ever in need of trying to figure something out or not certain how to do something, the support page and its ancillary sites like the Zoom channel on YouTube and whatnot, they give a good bit of information to help you out.
Yeah, I just dropped the link to Zoomtopia in the chat. It's actually November 8th and 9th, so it's in a couple of weeks, but I would encourage you to check that one out.
So after you've kind of familiarized yourself with, your Zoom account and you've decided, okay, hey, I want to go with a webinar environment versus a meeting environment. My next piece of advice is kind of determine your best follow through. And what I mean by that is think it out and maybe even, practice it out in terms of what you want the experience to be for the persons that you're going to be inviting to attend that event, right? So the simplest example I can use here is whether or not your meeting or webinar should have registration as a requirement. I'm sure we've all been to enough Zoom meetings and Zoom webinars where some of them you gotta go to this registration page and you gotta fill out some information in order for you to receive the actual credentials to join that event. On other occasions, you can just get a link, and it's a join link versus a registration link, and all you need to do is just click it and you're in. So figuring out what type of and that's just an example, right? Figuring out the type of experience that you want your event, whether it's a meeting or a webinar, to be for your attendees and your different participants will then dictate to you how and what you choose to activate when you're scheduling that event in Zoom, right? So again, this example I used here is whether or not to have registration as a requirement or not. Yeah.
Yeah, we like to do registration just because we want to know who is attending to make sure we can send a link to the recording back to you. So we use it just to be able to communicate with folks that were in the session.
Absolutely. And again, each option has its advantages and disadvantages. Again, what Marshall says is absolutely correct, right? having that information in terms of the persons who registered provides not only the ability to follow up with all of them, whether or not they actually attended the session live, but it also gives you a bank of contact information for persons who you know are kind of interested in what you're doing. So it's no different than if somebody, let's say, went to your webpage and subscribed to your club or district newsletter, right? You now have that person as a contact that's interested in what your club or what your district is doing. So similarly, so that's what registration also provides for, right? It helps you build this list of contacts that you can now use as a resource to promote different things that your club or your district are doing, whether it's an event, whether it's a fundraiser, because these folks have actually demonstrated that they're interested in what your club or what your district is putting out.
That's a great point. It's kind of lead generation for your club or your district. When we started as the public image coordinator team, we had a list of 0. And through the series of webinars and other content that we've shared, we now have north of 3,000 people that we communicate with monthly about our webinars and all the content that we create. So it's a great way to find people that are interested in what you're doing so you can have that relationship with them.
Exactly. And again, one of the things that, we started off with and Marshall highlighted is how the heck do you engage members, right? This is one of the ways that you keep engaging with members is you just consistently follow through and, don't let things go too quiet. Always let them know that, hey, there's something new coming up. If you're interested in it, great. Maybe they themselves may not be interested in it, but hey, they may forward it on to 10 other people and you may get some interest from them too.
Yeah, and always provide value. If you're just sending out a bunch of garbage, your unsubscribe rate is going to, I think I'm getting into the November webinar. I'm sorry, Susan. We have a very low unsubscribe rate on our mailing list because I think the team does a pretty good job of delivering value. So with that, I'll shut up and let Sean get back to it.
That's all right. So the next little tip that I have when it comes to Zoom is about saving templates. So when you create a meeting or a webinar in Zoom, one of the things that you can do is you can actually save that meeting or webinar as a template for use in scheduling a new meeting or a new webinar. And what that does is it kind of saves all the settings for you, right? So that you don't have to spend a lot of time going back and figuring out what did I do last time or whatever it is, what setting did I use? Did I choose registration or not? Or what were the registration criteria or fields that I used last time? Or sometimes if it's, let's say you may have created a poll and you don't want to have to recreate the poll. Again, these meeting templates just allow you to save a lot of information, whether you want to just reuse everything as is, or whether you just want somewhere to start and tweak it from one meeting to the next or one webinar to the next. It's a great resource and it's a great time saver. I use it constantly, district level and the club level. We use it at the zone pretty much on a consistent basis. Anytime we're creating new events, whether it's a webinar or a meeting. So definitely explore and utilize that template feature in Zoom. So run of shows. Some persons may be familiar with this term, some may not. I'm just going to say really briefly, a run of show is essentially just a fancier term for a more thoroughly thought out agenda. So in most cases, when you have a meeting or a webinar or on a kind of online event, most people are going to have some kind of agenda, right? At least you want to know, hey, at 9 o'clock, this is going to happen. At 9:30, that's going to happen, and so on and so forth. A run of show will essentially take that basic agenda that you will draft and start expanding it out into a little bit more detail, where you can account for essentially everything that needs to happen on screen. Everything that's going to take place on your event, whether it's who's going to be speaking when, who's going to introduce who at what time. Sometimes it may include what they're going to say, where it's coming from, whether or not they're going to be using some type of multimedia. And then, from a Zoom standpoint, you also will include roles and responsibilities to a certain extent in terms of who's going to be controlling that multimedia, who's going to be, what do they need to put up on screen? When do they need to put it up? So a run of show is really key and a really great resource for you to have and prepare before your event. Work on it a few days, a few weeks, a few months before, how much of a lead time you need. What it'll do is it'll help you and everybody else involved in the event, particularly those who are working with you behind the scenes in Zoom, as well as for those folks who are going to be on screen, speaking, presenting, give them a better idea of how things are going to work and build a little bit more confidence in people and them just not being that afraid of Zoom and not being that afraid of technology. So run a show, definitely a given. The bigger your event, the more important it is. You know, when you're doing a casual meeting, let's say if it's a regular club meeting or something like that, you would probably not need a run of show. But, you know, if your club is going to host an online event and invite other members, other clubs, general public, stuff like that, you want to make sure you put your best foot forward. So this is a great preparatory document that will help guide you running through the steps on the day of the actual event.
I've been to some club meetings that could have used to run a show.
So have I. I mentioned this as part of the run of show, right? When it comes to assigning roles, but I really wanted to emphasize it on its own. It takes a team to pull off a lot of these type of events, right? And a team is going to be made up of persons who each have their own role. Sometimes they're going to provide backup to a particular person in case he or she can't make it or gets disconnected for some reason. So you definitely want to make sure that you assign roles, that persons know what their role is on the day, how long they're going to be expected to serve in that role, what the exact duties are, and get them familiar with it. Obviously, it's always better to choose people who have a certain level of familiarity and expertise in a particular role. You know, everybody has to start somewhere. So even if it's somebody who does not have a lot of experience or expertise, but has enthusiasm, I'm using a lot of E's, sorry, that's fine too. They can learn on the fly. Again, point them to the support page, point them to tutorial videos. They can figure it out. It's not that difficult. And as Marshall and I will probably keep saying, you can't really break anything. But on the day itself, you don't necessarily want them to be the folks who have no idea what to do, how to do it, kind of thrown into the deep end. So assigning these roles, making sure that they have a little bit of experience and expertise prior to the day of the event itself is key. Backups are always great for certain positions in case something goes wrong. And yeah, I mean, you can have as many people, as few people as you need. It's really up to you to determine the different roles and sometimes, you know, one person is going to do three things. In another scenario, you can have three people doing one thing. So it's really up to you. And again, I'm sorry, but all of these things are still, you know, before the event itself happens, right? Confirm and organize content. So again, in most cases, when we do webinars, when we do meetings with a lot of participants, whatnot, there's usually a speaker. That speaker usually has some kind of content, whether it's a presentation, whether it's a video. Make sure that everyone is aware, especially everyone who's part of the team that's going to be running things, is aware of what content's going to be on screen, what the needs may be, that everybody knows how to share stuff, that there's a backup of the content somewhere. Case in point, on many occasions, you know, the person who has the content is the only one with the content. They lose their internet connection, that's it. Nobody else has the content for that session, and the session essentially kind of loses thrust. Making sure that everyone knows what needs to be there. There's at least more than one copy, or at least two copies of it, split between people, so that in case one goes down, somebody else has it. It's key. Start off by knowing what content is going to be necessary to pull off your event. Checklists are great, right? Checklists give you the ability to not have to remember everything in your head. It also provides a way of standardizing best practices, standardizing what works and what versus what doesn't work specifically for you and the type of event that you want to have. There are a lot of Zoom checklists out there already that people have published and put out to help folks out. I'm not saying that any of them are better than the other. I'm saying check them out, copy and paste, or as we like to say, you know, in
rip off and duplicate.
There you go, R&D, rip off and duplicate. Not every checklist is maybe going to have everything you want. And then some checklists may have a lot more than you need. So again, it's not so much where you get it from and what you use or whether it's a combination of things. It's the fact that you just should have a checklist. Because on the day of the event itself and the days leading up to the event, and possibly even the days after the event, there are a few things, sometimes a lot of few things that you're going to have to do or what the team's going to be responsible for. And yeah, that checklist is at least going to make sure that you get things done on time, you get things done in the order that they need to go out and to be completed in order for, again, your event to be a success. And last but not least, practice makes perfect. I'm not going to, this is self-explanatory, right? Essentially, what I'm trying to say here is if you have the opportunity before an event, whether you want to call it a practice session, whether you want to call it a rehearsal, whether you want to call it a dry run, just give everybody an opportunity to ask questions, to run through things, make sure everything's working, to check those boxes, whether it's from a technical standpoint, whether it's from a speaking standpoint, whether it's from a run of show standpoint. Just get your ducks in a row. The more you do it, the more efficient everything's going to become, the better your event is going to be at the end of the day. So your event has started. First thing you're going to do, tech checks. I think, again, this is relatively self-explanatory, right? Everything from, is everybody's video working properly? Is everybody's internet connection stable? Is everybody's mic working? Is the lighting good? All of those things are tech checks. And it should be a standard procedure in most, if not all, of your online events, just because, again, you want to make sure you put your best foot forward. So that's something you're going to do at the very, very start of the event, right? Before actually even everybody else jumps on or whatnot. Sometimes you want to start about 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes before the start time of the event. That's when you want to do your tech checks. Other things like activations. So once you're officially going, right, certain things you may want to do, make sure that you record your meeting, whether you record it to the cloud, whether you record it to your local machine, whether if you're going to stream that, you can stream it live to Facebook, stream it live to YouTube. And then last but not least, you also sometimes, want to enable transcription or closed caption services. All those things you should make sure are active just at the very start and before you kick things off officially in your meeting. Spotlighting. I'm going to not focus too much on this because spotlighting has its pros and cons, but essentially more so in a meeting environment, that's when spotlighting may become necessary. And I will paint one scenario where, it is more than useful. That's when you have more of a panel discussion happening, multiple speakers are on the screen talking amongst each other. That's when you want to spotlight more than one person at a time, so that all 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 persons that are on that panel are going to be seen on the screen at the same time. Other than that, spotlighting, again, can be useful, but it can also be a bit tricky because sometimes, I'm sure some persons may have experienced this, you would have activated somebody and they are in the spotlight, they stop talking, somebody else starts talking, but that other person who stopped talking is still spotlighted and the screen hasn't switched over to the new person who's talking. So it can get a little tricky. I will say, be a bit wary when using it, but definitely use it if you're doing any kind of panel discussions where you can highlight more than one speaker on the screen at the same time. During the event itself, be ready for anything, right? There are a lot of X factors involved there. It's technology, it's electricity, right?
It's the internet.
it's people. So yeah, it's the internet. Any number of things can happen, right? Again, we've all been in situations where somebody's lost their internet connection. We've all been in situations where you may have practiced it and in the practice session, somebody shares their screen without any issues, but then on the day itself. So keep your wits about you, but just be prepared, right? Have things at the ready, and you don't have to waste a lot of time looking to cover your bases if something goes wrong or help out somebody else if something goes wrong on their end. It should really be at your fingertips, or at least at somebody's fingertips who's part of your team, right? So after the event, once everything's done, you want to definitely find and download your recording. Sometimes if you're recording to the cloud, great. If you're recording to your local machine, again, through the Zoom web portal, you should be able to find all your recordings, regardless of whether you did it to the cloud or to your own computer. Zoom logs everything through the web portal pretty decently. I said find or download. I'm not saying everybody has to download, but you should definitely at least know where your recording is. So if you need to download it or if you need to access it, it's not going to be a matter of you having to search for it forever.
I know we have heard anecdotal evidence that if you record locally to your computer, the quality might be better than if you record to the cloud. May not be as convenient, but there is some evidence that if you want to have a really nice recording, you may want to record locally to your computer. Also, I know Sue from Villages Evening asked about uploading videos to Vimeo from Zoom, and if that's possible. And that's actually something that Zone 34 Public Image Team does a lot of, is we've used a Zoom plugin. Is it a Zoom plugin or a Vimeo plugin? It's one of the two, where at the end of every session, it automatically takes that Zoom recording and puts it over into our Vimeo account. And at that point, we can share it with others. Now in Vimeo, we use Vimeo a lot. You can actually edit it, so you can cut out the beginning and the end if you want. So there are some plugins that allow you to automatically store that information into your Vimeo account. So that's kind of a cool one. I know a lot of people use YouTube. There's probably something in YouTube out there as well, but there is a way to do it with Vimeo. Sue, that does work. It's only when you record to the cloud. It doesn't work with the plugin when you record to the computer.
Correct. So I think, just like a lot of these other options, right? There are pros and cons for each one. As Marshall said, by default, a local recording or a recording to your local machine would probably give you a better resolution and a better quality of video. But again, there are different things in Zoom that are available to beef up cloud recording qualities as well. And again, if you explore some of these options in the settings and, look it up on the support page, you'll find that, there are all these little tweaks that are available that sometimes you don't actually have to pay extra for. You just need to request it from Zoom because it's not automatically activated on your account. But to get back to the recording, after you found your recording, and this is specifically if it's a cloud recording and you want to get it out very quickly, particularly if it's something like a club meeting, where you don't want too much time to lapse before sharing it, you can just share it directly from the cloud recording in Zoom, whether you want to send it to a specific set of users or whether you want to share it publicly. Just use that share function in Zoom for the recording and you can send it out right away. And as Marshall said, Zoom provides a little editing capability where you can kind of trim little parts of the recording, and just edit it a little bit. If sometimes you've started a recording early and 10 minutes go by where nobody says anything, you can trim that out in Zoom itself. You don't actually have to do it anywhere else. I would always advocate to find and download and share reports. And by reports, what we mean are things like the registration report from Zoom, the attendance report from Zoom. If you had any polls or surveys being conducted, download those reports. Those provide a lot of good information. If you can use it, great. It's always better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. Sometimes, particularly when you're running a lot of concurrent sessions and whatnot, you kind of always want to know where people were, who was attending what. That's where reporting and these reports that are available through Zoom come into play. So definitely, I would always advocate to use the reporting tool in the web portal for your account. Find the reports that you need, download them. In most cases, these teeny tiny files, so it's not going to take up any space on your machine. You can always, email them to other people and just share the information. This is an optional one, and I will emphasize optional here, right? You can always download, whether you did a cloud recording or local recording, you can download the video and then edit it, right? Not just trim the beginning and end, but you can add different elements to it. If you want to add a nice little intro that your club has, if you want to add other video to it as well, it's up to you. Editing takes some time. It requires, in most cases, it requires additional software. There's a lot of editing software out there, some really good free ones, some really good paid ones. It's up to you. But at the end of the day, you want to, again, try and put your best foot forward. If that means editing the video, creating a certain template so that all the things coming out of your club or coming out of your district have a similar look to it and are branded correctly, that's a pretty good reason to edit videos right there, is to brand them correctly. I would definitely advocate for that option. And then last but not least, I know whether or not you edited your video, you definitely want to share it, right? So even before, when we spoke about sharing the raw video directly from Zoom, this is more about public sharing, right? This is about getting it out there, getting this product that your club or your district has made out to the general public. So it's not just members are included, but it's everybody else as well, right? It's people in other districts and other clubs. It's the public in general. So you want to make sure and you get it out there and use a decent platform to get it out there. So once you've created your video, whether you edited it or whether it's just the raw one, put it up on Facebook, put it up on YouTube, put it up on your Vimeo channel. Share those links with as many people as possible so that at least, persons who attended on the day have a way of looking back at it. Persons who weren't able to make it on the day have a way of accessing it and catching up. And then this is going to be applicable whether it's before, during, after, scheduling the event, whatever, right? Just keep learning, just keep practicing. That's the main way to improve. That's the way you get better at things more than anything else. And again, we're probably going to overemphasize this. There are very few things to break here. And even if you change the setting on one occasion, you can always change it back on another. But to make improvements, to really build skill sets, to be more confident in using something like Zoom and other tools, it's all about just learning and practicing. And with that, I'm going to say I'm sorry for taking up so much time, but I hope it was useful for everybody.
Yeah, that was great stuff, Sean. Appreciate you going through that. And certainly very detailed and lots of good content there in terms of how to update those settings and what to do before, during, and after a webinar. So I appreciate that. I know we're running a little bit late here. It's 6:54. I want to be mindful of everyone's time. I will crank through a lot of questions that we had. So I'm going to go through a couple of things. Folks were asking about cross-population on social media sites. How do I post maybe once and have it go to multiple places? We've had good success. Actually, there's native ways to do it on Instagram. Instagram tends to be the one that a lot of people start with when they want to cross post, because you can always start on Instagram and post over to Facebook and Twitter. I know in the past that was the only way to do it. Although now that Facebook has bought Instagram, I think there may be ways to start on Facebook and go back over to Instagram. But it is very easy to start on Instagram, post something there, and in the settings, say that you also want to share it over to Facebook and Twitter. And so that's one way that you can cross-populate posts on multiple social media sites. And it is important to be mindful that there are kind of different voices for different channels. You're looking at different demographics. Facebook tends to skew older. Twitter seems to trend younger and angrier and more male. Although I do like to use Twitter to find out about current events. And Instagram seems to be one that is kind of in the middle, but it's more diverse and it has a more casual, I think, voice. So that's one way, is just to use the native settings inside of Instagram. However, on the Zone team, we use a tool called Zapier, and that makes it pretty easy to cross-post from one channel to another. It's essentially, post in one place and then go to several other places. You can also create some more complex automations where if you want to maybe save the photo that you're posting into a Dropbox, you can kind of add that into the flow as well. So that's Zapier, Zapier.com. And maybe if I can get, hey, Sean, can you add Zapier to the chat so folks can check that out? It's free for the first, I think you get 5 automations in Zapier. And after that, you do have to pay. Another one is If This, Then That. That one's been around forever. They've changed their pricing model a couple of times. I'm not sure if they're struggling or trying to stay in business, but If This Then That is one that has been around probably for about 10 or 15 years. And that's another good one as well. And that one may be the most user-friendly because they have a lot of what they call recipes or automations already built in. So you may check out If This Then That. It's ifttt.com as a way to cross-post from multiple social media sites. So that's those are a couple of ways to do it, either doing it natively inside like something like Instagram or using an additional tool. This one, somebody asked about putting an overlay on the Zoom screen, and of course my camera died. I use a tool called Camo Studio, and Camo Studio allows you to use an old iPhone as your web camera, and it does allow you to create those cool overlays. So a lot of times I'll put the Rotary logo up there and use the Rotary logo as an overlay. Some folks were asking about forms, and we find that forms are super, super powerful. We love forms, actually. I know all of you know that after going through the various tasks that we have put out there for the citation. But we find forms are a great way to collect information from your constituents, whether it's your members or people that you want to talk to. We really like using forms, and we use Cognito forms. We find that one's the most flexible for a lot of our needs. It creates some pretty neat conditional formatting. So if someone answers a question one way, you can kind of create a specific question flow after that. Some people use SurveyMonkey. SurveyMonkey's a lot like that. There's Google Forms, there's Woo Forms. But I think what we like most about using forms is the ability to collect data. We have collected so much great data from the folks in Zone 34 through the citation that we are able to use to help us improve what we deliver to the zone, to the districts and the clubs. So it's a great way of collecting data that can be reusable. You guys share with us photos of what you're doing out in the zone, and we reuse that in a lot of our materials, and we just find it's very powerful. It's actionable. We find that we can create workflows. So if someone does something and creates a form, submit something, we can use that data to do other things. And so this is a question that came from Aya Byrne in Central Cayman Islands and Amanda Groover in 6910. And we're going to create some demo recordings showing how we use forms, and hopefully those will be helpful. Now, I know we're coming right up at the top of the hour, and I, again, want to be mindful of everyone's time. We have added to our website, and we're going to be floating this to the homepage. It's on a subpage right now that's not linked from the homepage, but it will be soon. It's how-to videos. And this is something that I kind of mentioned early on in the webinar. We're going to create these kind of step-by-step guides of how we do stuff and create the videos so you can follow along and do it yourself. I'm going to switch my screen real quick and go over to this screen and show you what we got here. So this is the new page that we built out. It's the public image demo videos. Sean did a great job building out this page for us. And you'll be able to click these links, and it'll pop up a video that shows you exactly how we do some of this stuff. And so we're going to be building out more and more of these as we, I told the team, I challenged the team. I said, everything that you do for the Zone 34 public image team, I want you to record that. And I want you to kind of talk through it and show others how you do that. And so I promise you, we're going to build out more and more of this content that's going to be completely applicable to Rotary clubs and kind of show you how to do this stuff. So we want to make sure that we create the content that you can use, and you can use this as a resource. We want the elevaterotary.org website to be a resource that you can use. And if you have a question about how to do something, we want you to come to this website, and we want to be able to demonstrate to you, this is how you do it. So we ran out of time tonight, but I promise you we'll do another one of these how the heck do you do that webinars, where we go through a lot of this material, a lot of this content, but at the same time, we'll be populating the how-to videos page of the Elevate Rotary website as well. And we'll always be looking for questions, suggestions, specific examples of what it is that you would like to see us do so that we can help you out. That's really the purpose of this team, is to help you learn how to fish. So, you can do it yourself. And so that's the purpose of our team, is to demonstrate these strategies, these tactics, to enable you, to empower you to be able to do it in the future. Now, looking forward to next month, and I know we're running a little bit over, but I do want to talk about our next webinar. And that's going to be on November 28th at 6 p.m. And I can tell you that I subscribe to a number of newsletters from clubs across Zone 34, and I see some really cool content coming out. And the most important thing is I see very consistent content. Every Monday morning, I know I'm going to get a newsletter from the Rotary Club of Villages Evening. Sue Bodner is going to be sending out an email, and it's always going to have really interesting content in it about her club and what they did in the past week or who the speaker is going to be that week. And so actually, I've asked Sue to join us on November 28th to help us out with this webinar. She's going to be joining incoming Rotary Public Image Coordinator, Susan Corder, and talk about how to leverage email for communications. Email is so powerful. Everyone always thinks about social media as kind of that end-all be-all for public image, but email is so much more powerful because with email, they've said, I'm interested in what you have to say, and I am going to give you access to my inbox to be able to share that information with me on a regular basis. Social media, I've heard the metaphor is it's like having the most popular McDonald's in the world, the busiest McDonald's in the world, but it's on top of a volcano that at any moment could erupt. You may have a social media channel that is doing amazing, but at some point, Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter is going to change their algorithm and it's going to destroy everything. And you may not get the traffic or the visibility or the reach that you do. With email, you're always going to have access to people's inboxes because they said, hey, listen, I want to hear from you. I want to know what it is that your club is doing or your district is doing. And so we find that it's a very important tool that we can use to use in public image in our public image strategy. So November 28th at 6 p.m., that's going to be incoming RPIC Susan Corder. And actually, Villages Evening Club President, Sue Bodner, she was the club public image chair last year, did a fantastic job, and now she's the president. They'll be doing that webinar on November 28th, and so I know you don't want to miss that. We'll be adding the link to register for that to the elevaterotary.org website later on this evening, and it'll also be in the follow-up email that you receive from us to register for that. As always, I want to remind you, this is our team. We're here to help you. We're here to teach you how we do the things that we do so you can tell the Rotary story and help us grow our great organization so we can do even more amazing things around the world. I appreciate everyone joining tonight. I appreciate your time, and thank you for all you do for Rotary. Have a great night, everyone. Take care.